Here are the top 5 highest picked perks in Warzone Season 3 Reloaded, and here are the top 5 highest KD perks in Season 3 Reloaded as well. Now just because they're the highest picked and the highest KD perks doesn't mean they're the right perks for you. So in this video I'm gonna go over the best perks to use in Warzone right now so you can decide for yourself what perks are the best for you. Along with the perks, we're also gonna be going over the best equipment that you should be using as well, so make sure you watch the whole video. Before we get into the video, make sure you guys hit that like button if you found this video useful, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on useful Warzone content like this. So let's get into it, guys. So with perk 1, there's 2 perks that you shouldn't really be using in Warzone in my opinion, and these 2 include kill chain and scavenger. Both of these I don't feel like they have that many cons where you should be wasting a perk slot on either one of these. Let's look at kill chain first. It just increases your chance of finding kill streak in supply boxes. I mean, in Warzone you can just buy kill streaks from the buy station, so there's no need for you to be using this perk, and it's not like it's a guaranteed kill streak. It just increases your chances of getting one. So I feel like it's just a waste of a perk if you're using this. Same thing with scavenger. Not enough pros for you to be wasting a slot on this. It helps you resupply ammo and plays from dead players, but there's just other perks that are way more useful in Warzone in my opinion. Now since I told you the bottom 2 perks, top 2 perks in my opinion are Serpentine and Quick Fix. Serpentine was just added to Warzone in Season 3 Reloaded, and I think it's a very solid perk for perk number 1. So what Serpentine does, it reduces your damage that you take to the base player health from bullets, explosives, and fire by 20%. So if you're sprinting and somebody's shooting at you, you're not gonna take as much damage as you would without this perk. I've been using this perk since it came out, and I find it pretty useful in a lot of situations, especially if you're an aggressive player like me. Now one of the biggest advantages of this perk is it helps you regroup and get out of some slimy and tough situations. Let's say you just killed a player and you took some damage in that fight, and there's another player trying to kill you from behind. What you're most likely gonna do is try to run and dip into corners so you can regroup and play it up, but the guy's gonna be shooting you in your back. So when you have this perk equipped, you're gonna take less damage and you're gonna have a more of a chance of escaping and dipping into that corner and healing up. Not only that, but if you combine this perk with your movement, you have a higher chance of killing the enemy, especially if you're moving back and forth and slide canceling. The guy's gonna have a harder time hitting you, and his bullets aren't gonna do as much damage, so it gives you more of a chance of actually just beaming the kid. This is probably my number 1 option right now, but let's look at all the other perks so you can decide for yourself which one you like better. So let's look at double time first. It increases your duration of tactical sprint, and it also increases your crouch speed movement by 30%. This is another perk I don't think a lot of people should be using, because if you're slide canceling correctly, you don't really need the double tactical sprint, because every time you slide cancel, your tactical sprint is gonna get reset. And yes, it does increase your crouch movement speed, but if you're crouching in Warzone, you're most likely gonna die anyways. You shouldn't really be crouching in any situations, honestly. The only time I would recommend using double time is if you're having problem with your slide canceling. So if you're not the best with your movement, try using double time, because it's gonna help you master that slide canceling, because your tactical sprint is gonna be longer, so that window to slide cancel is gonna be longer as well. Now let's move on to EOD. This one recently got a buff, and it helps you take reduced damage from non-kill streaks, explosives, and fire. This is basically gonna save you from getting one shot from explosives. Now back in season 1 and 2, when everybody was running around with the RPG, this perk was extremely useful. Even with the C4, a lot of people was using C4 before it got nerfed, but nowadays not a lot of people are running around with RPGs or C4s. So I don't find this perk to be useful in a lot of different situations. The only way I would use this perk is if I'm playing tactically. If I'm playing to win, I'm gonna play tactically. I'm gonna be holding down power positions. You might find this perk to be useful because people might throw grenades and explosive fires at you, so that's when this might come in handy. But other than that, if you're an aggressive player running around the map, this doesn't come in handy that much. But when you have it equipped, you're gonna be thankful you have it equipped, because you're not gonna be dying to RPGs in a single shot. I've definitely run into people using RPGs a little more than usual nowadays. I don't know if it's just me, let me know in the comments. Another thing EOD does is it resets the timer of the frag grenade when you pick it up. So let's say an enemy cooks a frag grenade and throws it in your room, you can pick it up and throw it back. But if you don't have EOD equipped, that nade's gonna explode in your hand, because that 5-second timer has already passed because the guy cooked it. But if you do have EOD equipped, that timer is gonna get reset right when you pick up, so you can throw it back at the enemy without having it explode in your hand. But yeah, I already talked about Serpentine and Scavenger, and let's move on to Cold-Blooded. Cold-Blooded is mostly used to counter other perks like Combat Scout and High Alert. Not a lot of people are using thermals these days, so that doesn't really matter. It's mostly used to counter other perks. So let's say an enemy has High Alert equipped. When you look at them, if you don't have Cold-Blooded on, their screen is gonna pulse from whichever direction you're looking from. But if you do have Cold-Blooded on, that screen won't pulse anymore, because this is gonna neglect that high alert. Same thing with Combat Scout. If you get hit, they can see you through walls because you're gonna be pinged. But if you have cold-blooded on, that won't happen. I can see people using this perk if they're tired of combat scout. Anyways, let's move on to the last one, quick fix. So what quick fix does is starts the regeneration of your base health faster than normal when you start plating up. This perk is useful in squad modes, duos or trios when you're fighting multiple enemies at once. Even when you're solo squatting, solo duo, solo trios, this perk comes in very handy. Not only that, but even in solos it's coming in handy when somebody's trying to third party you. So let's say you just got done with the fight and you have a sliver of health left. If you don't have this perk equipped, your base health is going to take longer to heal. But if you do have it equipped, right when you start plating up, you're going to regenerate your base health, so the enemy isn't going to be expecting you to be fully healed up. It definitely comes in handy in tight situations, and I used this before Serpentine came out, and I've definitely found this to be helpful, especially in solos. If you play solos, you know there's a lot of third partying happening. Every time people hear gunfire, they run straight towards it, so this perk helps a lot because it regenerates your health way faster. But yeah, that's perk number 1. Now let's move on to perk number 2. Before I get to the good perks, let me tell you the 2 perks that you should really be using in perk number 2. So the 2 perks are Hardline and Point Man. So Hardline basically gives you a discount at the buy station. Again, this is not a bad thing, but there's just more perks that are more useful in more different situations than these 2 perks. If you're playing with a squad, maybe one person can have this perk so you can constantly pump UAVs and buy them cheaper as well. But if you're playing solos, I don't really know why you would use this perk. There's just better options out there. Same thing with Point Man. Point Man helps you earn more money and more XP. So the only time you should be using Point Man is when you're trying to level up guns. It helps you get more XP. But in normal Warzone, there's not really any need to be using this perk. Now let's get to the good perks. Let's get Overkill out of the way. This is a necessary perk, especially on your first loadout. But which perk should you be using in your second loadout? There's many great options in this second slot. Starting off with Restock. This helps you recharge your equipment for 25 seconds. Except for stims. So you can recharge your grenades, molotovs, semtexes, frag grenades. All of that is going to recharge in 25 seconds, and you can hold up to 2 except for stims. Stims take 60 seconds because they don't want you sitting in storm and just stim glitching the whole time. Let me know if you guys remember the stim glitch. That thing came back 6 different times and they could not fix it. Those were the good old days of Warzone when there was so many glitches and bugs in the game. But yeah, Restock is used by a lot of high level players because it allows you to just restock your equipment. The meta with Restock right now is people using snapshot grenades. Those are going to be recharged in 25 seconds, so you can just throw them out in buildings and see if anybody's camping in them. I found this to be extremely useful in solos. Instead of using that baby monitor, I just chuck out a nade in a building and clear out the whole building. And snapshots are even better than the baby monitor because you get to know which floor they're on. But yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite perks to get in the second loadout. It's either I get Restock or High Alert, depends on which game mode I'm playing. If I'm playing solos, I usually get High Alert, but if I'm playing squad modes, I tend to get Restock. Now next, let's talk about Tempered. So what Tempered does is lets you get fully plated up with the only 2 plates instead of 3. Now this is great for players that are aggressive and like to get into a lot of fights in the match. Not only do you save plates because you only need 2 plates instead of 3 to get fully armored up, but it's also gonna save you time and get you healed up quicker. So let's say you just got done with the fight and somebody else is pushing you. Instead of getting 3 plates in to be fully armored up, you only need 2 and you're gonna be ready to fight again. So this is extremely useful if you like to get into fights and just cause commotion on the map. Next, let's look at High Alert. This is my favorite second loadout perk, especially because I play solos a lot. So what High Alert does is it makes your screen pulse from whichever direction the enemy is looking at you. Let's say you're running around in the open and somebody's looking at you from behind or is about to shoot you. Your screen is gonna pulse at the bottom, so this gives you an indication that somebody's looking at you. So now you can make the decision to hide or turn around in them and beam them. Not only does High Alert help you beat campers, but it also helps you with dead silence. If you have High Alert equipped, dead silence won't work on you. You'll still be able to hear the player's footsteps. Now of course the Warzone audio sucks, so you still might not know where the player is, but still, nonetheless, it still does help with dead silence. This is a great perk to use in solos if you hate dying to campers, people sitting in bushes, or generally people coming up behind you and shooting you in the back. Slot number 2 is highly competitive with Restock, Tempered, High Alert, Overkill, and Ghost. Slot number 2 is definitely a hard choice, but let's move on to the next perk. We have Ghost. Now Ghost got nerfed, but before it got nerfed, everybody was running this on their second loadout. Ghost helps you stay undetected from UAVs, heartbeats, radar drones. So basically, you're a ghost. You won't be seen anywhere on the map, especially if you're just hiding in a building. Before the nerf, all the campers was using this. They would hide in a building and nobody would know where they were. But Raven nerfed it, so this only works if you're moving. So the campers out there, this doesn't work anymore. If you're sitting in a building, people can still see you on the UAVs and the heartbeats. That's why a lot of people have stopped using Ghost and they've been using other perks like High Alert and Restock. But yeah, those are the perks for slot number 2. It's a highly competitive category. The perks I would recommend for your first loadout, obviously you're going to be using Overkill. For your second loadout, if you're playing solos, I would recommend using High Alert. It's going to save your life a lot of times. And if you're playing squad mode, you can use Tempered or Restock. You can also use Restock in solos as well, but I just prefer using High Alert more than Restock in solos. Now let's move on to the third slot, Perk 3. Perk 3 is the only slot that I would say that there's a clear winner. There aren't many perks that you really want to be using in this slot. The best one is Combat Scout. What Combat Scout does is if you hit an enemy, you'll be able to see them through the walls because they're gonna get pinged. Not only will you be able to see them through walls, but you'll also be able to see them on your map as well. So it comes in handy when players are hiding in bushes. So once you get a shot on them, you'll know their exact position because they're gonna get highlighted and you can just easily beam them. Not only that, but it also comes in handy when people are chilling in windows. You hit them once, they're gonna get highlighted and they're gonna run away to a different part of the building. But since you have Combat Scout equipped, you're gonna know which way they went. If they jumped out of the building or if they are hiding in a different room. I would definitely recommend everybody using Combat Scout. But if you're not using Combat Scout, the only other perk that comes close is Amped. It helps you switch your weapons faster and reload the rocket launchers faster as well. I would be using this perk if I'm using Sniper. So let's say I get a shot into the player, I break his armor. So I'm quickly going to switch to my other gun and just finish him off. That's the only time and situation I find Amped to be helpful. It can also come in handy if you're fighting a long battle and you run out of ammo in your SMG. You can quickly switch to your AR and finish the battle off. But I don't really run to those situations that much, so I just prefer Combat Scout. Now other perks in the category include Tune Up, which reduces the charge time of field upgrades by 40% and reduces the revive by 25%. You use this in squad modes to help get your teammates up faster when somebody's pushing you. Maybe one person on the squad can have this and can play the medic role. So whenever somebody goes down, you can quickly get them up and the other squad won't be expecting everybody to be up. This is also going to help with your field upgrade. So if you have an ammo box as your field upgrade, it's going to reduce the charge time by 40%. You can keep putting ammo boxes down for your teammates and never run out of ammo in your team. You can use this perk if you're playing as a support player for your squad. It's going to help you get your teammates up faster and provide them ammo or armor. Next, let's look at Shrapnel. What Shrapnel does is lets you spawn in with an extra piece of lethal equipment, and when you throw a nade and somebody else takes explosive damage, it delays their health regeneration. Again, I don't think it comes in that much handy in Warzone, especially. Combat Scout is just gonna come into handy in many different situations and a lot more situations than Shrapnel, so I would just be using Combat Scout. Next, we're gonna look at Battle Harden. It reduces the strength of enemy flash, stuns, EMP, and gas effects. You're also immune to snapshot grenades as well. As I talked about with Restock, a lot of people using snapshot grenades. So if you're dying to a lot of snapshot grenades, try using Battle Hardened. Same thing with stuns. If you're getting stunned a lot and you're tired of getting stunned and getting killed by stuns, Battle Hardened is the way to go. But after they nerfed the stuns, it doesn't really last that long and you can kind of get away with it. It's not as bad as it used to be in Warzone, so I don't really find this Battle Hardened perk to be that useful. But anyways, let's move on to the next one. We have Engineer. Engineer basically lets you see enemy equipment on the floor, on the walls, whichever, like C4, Claymores. So if somebody's camped up in a building, has Claymores, C4s everywhere, you can actually see them instead of running blindly into it. You can also hack enemy equipments and field upgrades like drones and whatnot. So if you're into that, go for it. But again, not really useful in Warzone. I would stick to Combat Scout. Lastly, we have Tracker. What Tracker does is leaves the enemy footprints behind, so you can see where the enemy went and you can be easier to detect which way they went. Now this basically helps when somebody's running away from you, so you can actually see which way they went. But I know since Warzone audios does suck, so it can come in handy, but I still like Combat Scout better. Now lastly, let's look at the equipment that you should be using in Warzone. First, let's start off with lethal equipment. Now the equipments are gonna actually depend on which perks you're using. Let's say for instance you're gonna be using Restock, so based on that you want to be picking whichever lethal or tactical equipment that's going to be best for that perk. Most of the times people tend to use Semtex and frag grenades. Most people use Semtex because they're easier to use. You just have to throw them and they're going to stick to any surface and they're just going to explode after a certain amount of time. But the downside to that is the enemy has a chance of actually running away. So on the other hand, you can use frag grenade, which you can actually cook. The frag grenade has a timer for 5 seconds that you can cook and throw it, and it's going to explode right at that time. Now this is useful because it doesn't give a chance for the enemy to run away. It's going to explode right away. Molotovs have been buffed as well, as they do a lot more damage. They can not only be used as an offensive weapon but also as a defensive weapon as well. So let's say if somebody's chasing you or trying to come up the stairs, you can just molly it and they won't be able to push. Claymores come in handy if you're playing more of a tactical style. If you're playing for the win, holding down power positions, you can put down Claymore to entrances so nobody actually comes up from behind and pushes you. But other than that, they don't have that much of a use in Warzone other than just holding down power positions or camping. Next with C4, as I said before, it actually got nerfed, so you can't throw it as high as it used to be. Before it got nerfed, you could throw C4 into the second stories of every building, but now it doesn't go as high, and it doesn't detonate in midair either. It has to land. Next, let's look at the throwing knife. Throwing knife is mostly used to finish down enemies so you don't waste ammo in your gun. A lot of people run this in Rebirth Island, so you should be running this in Rebirth, especially since there's a lot of action and a lot of people are pushing you at once. So instead of wasting your ammo on the downed player, you can just have that ammo still in your clip and be ready to shoot the next guy that comes along. It saves you from reloading, and sometimes when you reload you end up dying because the enemy pushes when you're not expecting them to. You can also do some trick shots with the throwing knife as well. It doesn't really kill players, especially if they're fully armored up, but you will break their armor. Next, let's look at the proximity mine. This is the same story with the claymore. This is more useful if you're playing more of a tactical, holding down power positions. You can throw them down so it alerts you when the enemy comes, and it also does damage to the enemy. So if they run over it, this is gonna go up in the air and it's gonna explode. But the one way to dodge that is if you're quick enough, you can just prone and it won't do any damage to you. Next, let's look at the thermite, which is an explosive that burns for a short amount of time when it's stuck to a surface. This is mostly used for cars, but you can also use it as a defensive or an offensive weapon. You can use it for a defense, just like the Molotov. If somebody's pushing you, you can just throw it on the ground so they can't push you, and if they do, they're gonna take damage. Or you can use an offensive weapon and just stick it to an enemy and they're gonna die eventually. So to summarize it for lethal equipment, the top 3 equipment I would be using is Semtex, Molotovs, or frag grenades. If you're playing Rebirth, you can throw in the throwing knife in there. Next, let's look at the tactical equipment. The heartbeat is a popular choice since day 1 of Warzone, and a lot of people still use the heartbeat. It's basically an iPad that scans in front of you to see if there's enemies in the area. So let's say you're using restock, I would go with snapshot grenades, stuns, or stims. So let's start from the top. Flash grenades, it blinds your enemies for a certain amount of period. Stun grenades is going to stun your enemies so they won't be able to move their crosshair left or right, or even move for that matter. It used to be a lot stronger, but since it got nerfed, it doesn't last as long, but still very viable if you're a skilled player. Smoke grenades, obviously it deploys a smoke screen. Snapshot grenades, when you throw this out, it's going to explode and it's going to provide you information about the enemy because it's going to highlight them. It's basically like Combat Scout Perk. You're going to be able to see where the enemy is, top floor, bottom floor, and it's basically going to highlight them for a few seconds. This comes in very handy in solos if you're using restock. You can just chuck these out every few seconds and clear out your surroundings and know where enemies are. Next, we have stims. As you guys know, stims not only heal you faster, but it also refreshes your traxel sprint and makes you move faster as well. These recently got a nerf as well, so they're not as good as they used to be, but still very viable for a top skilled player. You can also use this with restock, but as you guys know, instead of 25 seconds with stims, it's going to be 60 seconds. So keep that in mind. Next, we have decoy grenade. It basically makes a lot of noise and pings of some fake gunfire on the map, so enemies think that there's gunfire going on because they're going to see red dots on the map. Lastly, we have gas grenade, which explode on impact and make a gas bubble. You can also use this with restock and they come in handy as well. So when somebody's stuck in this gas grenade, they won't be able to aim down sight, so that gives you a chance of beaming that person down before they actually get the chance of aiming down their sight. It also used to fuck up the gas mask animation, but now since they kind of fixed it, doesn't do it as much, but still very viable when it comes to getting first shots in. You can play as offense, you can chuck it at the enemy and they won't be able to aim down sight, they're gonna start coughing. Or even as defense, if you're running away, you can just chuck it behind you and they won't be able to chase you because they're gonna run to the gas. So to summarize it, the top tactical equipment that I would be using in Warzone right now would be heartbeat, stims, stun grenades, or snapshot grenades. I would still have the heartbeat on my first loadout, but if you guys restock on your second loadout, I recommend using the snapshot grenade, stim, or even the stun grenade. So I know that was a lot of information to digest, so to help you out, I'm gonna put out different combinations of perks on the screen for different playstyles that I think are the best. But anyways, that's all I have for you guys today. Let me know if you guys enjoyed the video and found this helpful, and I would appreciate it if you guys hit that like button if you did. And lastly, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button so you can join the community and learn more useful Warzone content like this. And since you just learned the best suitable perks for your playstyle, check out this video on the screen so you can figure out the best guns you should be using as well. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.